This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to How Empires Actually Collapse. This is Chapter 2, and today we're talking about money, or more specifically, how empires basically spend themselves into oblivion. We'll explore the classic ways that economic disasters and really bad financial decisions can bring down even the mightiest civilizations. Let's get into it. An empire usually dies broke long before it dies in battle. Rome's silver coin shrank to a sliver. Soviet oil money vanished in a single price crash. Now, think of a superpower today. Is its greatest enemy really another army? Or its own balance sheet quietly bleeding out? In this series, we're going to follow empires not on the battlefield, but through the ledgers no one wants to read in public. Wars, palaces, and grand projects don't pay for themselves. They leave long shadows in ledgers. IOUs to foreign bankers, promises to veterans, subsidies to restive regions. Over time, those shadows start to move on their own. Interest piles up, tax protests spread, and rulers quietly sell tomorrow's stability to survive today's crisis. We'll look at how a silver windfall helped Spain feel richer while its productive base withered, how cheap energy masked deep structural cracks in the USSR, and how modern states can look powerful even as inflation eats their credibility. Think of this as tracing hairline fractures in a dam. Tiny, technical, boring, right up until the water starts to roar. Across history, the real turning points often hide in small, technical choices. A new tax that seems minor, a clever financial workaround, a quiet deal with foreign creditors. These don't look like rise and fall moments, they look like paperwork. Yet they decide whether a state can still feed armies, calm angry cities, or keep distant elites loyal. In this series, we'll zoom in on those inflection points, when rulers swap long-term resilience for short-term relief, like a musician selling off instruments to keep the tour going one more season. The drama is subtle, but the stakes are absolute. Start with the raw mechanics. Rulers rarely admit we're running out of money. Instead, they quietly change how money works. One lever is what the state demands from its people. Early on, many powers lean on in-kind contributions: grain for garrisons, horses for campaigns, labor on roads. It's clumsy but resilient. If prices move, a cart of wheat still feeds soldiers. Over time, however, ambitious states push everyone toward monetized taxes. Now peasants must earn coins, not just grow food. That nudges entire societies into market exchange and locks them to whatever happens to the currency. Another lever is who the state leans on when that currency weakens. Rome increasingly relied on provincial elites to prepay obligations in return for favors and status. Habsburg Spain turned to Genoese bankers who fronted cash against future silver. The USSR used Western credit lines and grain imports as a pressure valve when oil receipts faltered. In each case, a quiet shift occurred, from funding power out of domestic surplus to renting legitimacy from outsiders or narrow internal factions. Then there's how burdens are distributed. When easy revenues flow, American silver, Soviet hydrocarbons, colonial trade monopolies, rulers can overpay key groups and undertax them at the same time. But as those streams thin, they face a brutal choice: squeeze the productive core harder or strip perks from armed and administrative elites. Historically, many choose a third, corrosive option: delay the reckoning through short-term gimmicks, delayed payments, forced loans, creative accounting, hoping for one more windfall. Those gimmicks accumulate. A missed stipend here, a late grain shipment there, a quietly unenforced tax on the well-connected. What looks like minor slippage is actually a rewrite of political promises. Once people stop trusting that the center will keep its side of the bargain, they invent alternatives: local credit networks, smuggling rings, regional militias, illegal currencies. The formal state still exists, but real power begins to migrate elsewhere. Your challenge this week: pick one modern country, not necessarily a crisis case, and track 3 signals for 7 days. 1. Any news about delayed payments or arrears. to workers, contractors, regions. 2. Any story about special tax breaks or exemptions for powerful groups. 3. Any report of parallel economic activity, barter, multiple exchange rates, capital controls. At the end of the week, ask, do these signals suggest a state tightening its system or quietly losing its grip?
Think about how different regimes tune their economies the way a band tunes its instruments. Some governments run a tight, disciplined rhythm section, predictable budgets, boring bond markets, modest deficits. Others keep turning the volume up, new subsidies, emergency programs, off-budget funds, until no one is sure which sounds are real and which are feedback. Take a resource-rich state that discovers offshore gas. For a while, it can paper over local discontent with infrastructure booms and public jobs. But watch what happens when global prices dip, construction sites stall, subcontractors go unpaid, and local banks suddenly sit on piles of non-performing loans. On paper, the headline indicators still look fine. In practice, the gig is falling out of sync. Or consider a country that leans heavily on foreign pension funds to buy its debt. As long as those investors stay, wages clear and imports flow. Once they worry about repayment and quietly step back, everyday events, a delayed highway repair, a missing hospital shipment, hint that the underlying score has changed. Future empires may unravel faster and more quietly. Capital now moves at the speed of a tap. A rumor on encrypted chats can trigger outflows before officials draft a press release. As states experiment with digital money, every tweak to code can rewire who bears risk. Climate stress adds another layer. Ports flooded, grids strained, food flows disrupted. Watch where governments cut or protect funding. Data centers, energy grids, coastal defenses. Those budget choices hint at which centers of power they expect to endure. When budgets fray, politics often follows. Watch who still gets paid on time during stress. Defense, security services, data monopolies, core urban regions. That priority list is a map of where authority is rooting itself for the next phase. In later episodes, we'll trace how these quiet reallocations can matter more than any speech or summit. Before next week, ask yourself, 1. Looking at my own situation, how exposed am I to rising interest rates or inflation through my mortgage, rent, loans, or business costs? And what's one concrete step I could take this week to reduce that vulnerability? For example, comparing fixed-rate options, renegotiating a contract, or trimming one inflation-sensitive expense. 2. If the local job market or broader economy slowed down like the examples in the episode, what specific skills, contacts, or side income ideas could I start nurturing today so I'm less dependent on just one employer or sector? 3. Given what I learned about how economic cycles work, where in my budget or business could I deliberately build a small shock absorber, even if it's tiny at first, so future downturns feel like a challenge I've prepared for instead of a crisis I'm blindsided by? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!